Welcome to Insatiable, the podcast where we discuss the intersection of food, psychology, and culture. Knowing myself, I like to be challenged. And this is when I started to question if what I was told to do, I needed to trade that for what felt good. And this is how you bridge the knowing but not doing gap. You have to double down on satisfaction, not discipline. I'm your host, Ali Shapiro, an integrated health coach, 32-year and counting cancer survivor, and have radically healed my relationship with food and my body. And for the past 17 years, I've been working with clients individually, in group programs, and in company settings to do the same. Welcome. The information in this podcast should not be considered personal, individual, or medical advice. Hello, I am back. I have missed being behind the mic, but I'm back for the foreseeable future. I have so many great episodes coming up for you all, including we're going to return with body stories with Sass. I know all of you have been loving those. I have a great interview with Elise Lunin, who has been on the pod last year around this time, and a lot of great minisodes to share with you guys, and some other great interviews that I can't wait to share with you. And today's episode is, I think, going to be really helpful for those of you who are struggling with the knowing but not doing gap, okay? So if you've ever found yourself doing all the right things for your health, and again, if you're in midlife, that's lifting heavy, eating protein, walking, and you still feel off, right? So either of those things, you know what you're to do and you're not doing it, or you're doing all the things and still feeling off and not getting the results that you want. That's what I came up against here this summer. And I'm going to walk you through how I got through it, because that was me, right? If you guys listened to my series on perimenopause and menopause, you know I'm a big advocate of a lot of what people are talking about out there, getting your protein, getting your sleep, walking and lifting. But a couple months ago at 46, post-menopause, after lifting for 4 years of strength training, I was doing all the things consistently, but I stopped wanting to do them. Not eating. Eating, I'm locked in. That's not really that challenging for me anymore, unless when I'm tired and not sleeping. But exercise, right? And so I, again, had drank the conventional menopause Kool-Aid, which is really important when you're first getting started. And I was doing all the things consistently. But then something started to shift, and I just didn't feel like going to the gym to weight train. And I wasn't just plateauing or maintaining the exercise benefits for me, which are really good moods, really great energy, and weight loss or maintenance like before. So I was just feeling really lethargic, feeling really uninspired, and I was starting to gain some of the weight back that I had just lost over the past 3.5 years. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through why I actually transitioned from focusing on strength to prioritizing cardio, specifically Orange Theory. It's a national chain. I know many of you have probably heard of it. I had always heard of it before, but was kind of like, I'll explain to you why I was like kind of anti initially. But this isn't because you need to do Orange Theory, right? In my work, I'm always about what works for you, when, and how to figure that out. And this episode is going to really help you start to think about that for yourself. But I want you to understand that when you stumble upon a knowing but not doing gap, right? The shoulds, I should be walking more. I should be strength training. I shouldn't be emotionally eating. I shouldn't be falling off track. What you really need is more self-awareness, not more scrolling on Instagram, not more trends, not thinking there's one magic bullet out there that's going to like fix you. You don't need to be fixed. Rather, I'm going to walk you through what's really going on underneath and why it makes sense. Okay. So just for those of you who are just joining us, my health backstory really quickly for newish listeners. I'm 46, like I said, and I'm post-menopause. My menopause was most likely brought on early by chemotherapy I had as a teenager. So about 4.5 years ago, I went to the doctor for plantar fasciitis, and I stepped on the scale for the first time since giving birth. So I also gave birth at 41. So I was 42 years old. I stepped on the scale for the first time postpartum, and I was 30 pounds above my pre-pregnancy weight. So in addition to plantar fasciitis, I just learned I was still 30 pounds above my pre-pregnancy weight, which is essentially what I gained during pregnancy. And I had terrible insomnia, which I had just chalked up to new motherhood. And it was also the pandemic. So I was walking outside I was more active than I had ever been because that was the only thing there was to do. So I felt really in the dark about what was happening to my body. I wasn't emotionally eating. I didn't think my eating had changed that much. And this was, again, coming off just a year before. I had overcome an infertility diagnosis naturally. Okay. I had a really easy, healthy pregnancy with normal weight gain. And I had a really empowering birth at 41. So to have not only my health, but my weight and my entire body fall apart on all levels a year later, it was really like the contrast was so disorienting. So about a year after getting on that doctor scale, so by the time I was 42, I realized I was in the final stages of perimenopause. And that hormonal shift explained a lot. It explained the weight gain, it explained my poor sleep and my rage and anger. So I had this like really complex and brutal soup of being postpartum and menopause at the same time. So that was about 4.5 years ago when, believe it or not, no one was talking about menopause like they are today. I can't believe like the explosion in information. And so I had found Dr. Stacy Sims' book, Next Level, and it really explained to me what was happening with my hormones and my body. And that, oh, by the way, hormones are more important than just whether or not you want to get pregnant, right? And so it really spoke to me like an adult to teach me how my body works. So she really recommends strength training, as she says, lifting heavy. So I had to get a coach to help me because I had never strength trained the way that she had recommended. And I was injuring myself a lot. And so over 4 years, I lost about 30 pounds and I really built consistent lifting habits and walking habits. And this is the most active I've been in my 30s and 40s. Okay. And yes, I ate more protein. One of the things I discovered through my insomnia was I thought I was eating kind of paleo-ish, but it was more keto. When you eat whole foods, it's really easy to eat a high fat, low carb, low protein diet. And that's what I was doing. So I shifted my nutrition, of course. And the beauty was I wasn't triggered by the weight gain. I mean, I wasn't happy about it, but I didn't do the shame spiral that used to happen when I struggled with my weight for 20 years, right? From the time I was 8 to 28. I've done so much of the emotional work through my work that I help other clients with. So my weight wasn't tied to my worth. So what this means is I didn't think my life was going to be limited because of weight gain, right? I wasn't happy and I was not comfortable in my body, but I was able to track food and not be triggered because I didn't think it meant I was a bad person if I, had overeaten or didn't hit my protein goals. Like I had really worked through my perfectionism. And I could just approach my health like a logic puzzle as a result of my own truths with food, because I didn't see this as a personal failure I should feel shame about. And this also meant I was able to allow it to take the time it was going to take because my insomnia really threw a wrench in whether I could like tackle anything above my baseline, which was caring for an infant, surviving a pandemic, and running a business. Okay. And so for me, like weight loss just wasn't as high of a priority as those other things. And for me, I hate tracking my food and it takes a lot of energy. And so that's why it took me 3.5 years to lose 30 pounds because I would care and then I would just kind of maintain, gain a couple of pounds and then lose more, like lose another 10, maintain for a while, gain a couple, and then, go back. So, but I did lose 30 pounds over about 3.5 years by following all this experts' advice, probably what's coming through your Instagram feed and what you're listening to on other podcasts like this, right? And for me, that was the strength training advice that Dr. Sims had talked about. The gym I went to really helped me with it. And then the sleep coach I hired, who is a functional nutritionist, and she really helped me address the root causes of my insomnia, which is in part because I wasn't getting enough protein or enough carbs. So that was the expertise advice. And that was like really solid, right? Really solid. It's kind of like base camp, right? If you're hiking a mountain. But as I tell my clients, those experts can only get you halfway up the mountain. Okay. But that next half, where, as the inspirational quotes say, the most beautiful views, right? And that is really the keeping it up half, right? The knowing but not doing gap. Bridging that, that's where you have to find your own path and you need a Sherpa. So Sherpas, right, are these skilled mountaineers who don't tell you, do it like I do it. They know strategy. They've worked with so many people. They know how to help you find your own path, right? Sherpas don't give formulas or rules to follow. And they're certainly not telling you that one magic bullet, whether that be lifting or protein or an energy green drink that shall be named nameless, is going to fix you, right? They're going to tell you it's a little bit more, you need to do a little bit more of something else, right? And it's not just one thing, but they guide you on your own path. So that's the backstory. Now I want to transition into this next part, which is about the knowing but not doing gap. And if you don't know how to bridge this gap, which is what my work is all about, so I do know how to do that, this can easily turn into a downward spiral. Okay. If you don't know how to bridge that gap and you think it's just about willpower or discipline, you're probably going to end up in a downward spiral. But if you know how to bridge that gap, you can spiral up. Okay. And so I'm going to show you how I did that. But this is going to give you a lot of clues because I'm going to tell you what was working underneath because it wasn't about Orange Theory. In some ways it was. So from about December through March of last year into this year, I had a ton of stress. Okay. I was launching some programs. Carlos, the year before, had lost his job, right? And so that's a big deal. He contributes to half of our income. And he was trying to figure out his way in the world, right? And then there's lots of behind the scenes stuff happening in my business, which is all wonderful and amazing stuff, but it's a lot of moving parts, okay? And then we were trying to decide where to send my son Essa to school. We were wondering, should we move to the suburbs and be able to just really feel comfortable and happy about the public schools and, have a lot more financial security, or do we stay in the city and go to private schools? And it was really existential, city versus suburbs. If you're a city person, you might understand that. And we were trying to decide what to do. And then you have to apply to these schools. We ended up going the private school route. And it's like, oh my God, what is the right one? And, all this stuff. And it really became a lot more involved than I was like bargaining for because I went to public school. Carlos went to public school. My parents were public school teachers. This was a very big learning curve. So anyhow, my insomnia came back those 4 months. So I was able to still adapt my workouts, which for me, I had to drop off the cardio sprints that I was doing. And I was just lifting and walking. It was really like a maintain era because I was so tired. I was eating well, but when I don't sleep, it's easy to get some extra food every day because of your decreased satiety. That is like physiologic, right? Your satiation hormones go down, your hunger hormones go up when you're not sleeping well. So I essentially had gained about 10 pounds over 10 months, which when I did the math is like a little over extra like 100 calories a day, which is very easy to do when you're not sleeping well. And it was also the holidays, and I don't really go crazy during the holidays, but I'm certainly like having exactly what I want. So by the time April rolled around, there was a real loss of joy around my exercise and just my overall health. Okay. I wasn't just plateauing, I was going backwards. And I just couldn't motivate myself to go to the gym, which at this stage of my life, over the past 4.5 years, I've developed such a habit and I love it, right? Because I've connected it to these mental health benefits, these energy benefits, and yes, the weight loss and to feel comfortable in my body. So that was very unlike me, okay? I was just mentally and physically tired. And then the compounding of my sleep issues was really starting to take a toll. And I was also feeling really emotionally drained, right? Even in parts of my work. And I recognize this as a falling off track trigger that I teach my clients when they're falling off track with food. But in this case, it also applies to exercise. It really applies to anything. But I was really tired. That's one of the main triggers why we know what we need to do, but don't do it. And that wasn't just physically, but like kind of existentially, right? And emotionally. And what I knew I needed then, come April, right? Well, so now we're April of this year when I didn't want to go to the gym. I needed self-awareness. Why is there this gap? I actually like moving my body. It feels good. It gives me great benefits immediately and long-term. And I was like, oh, I need to change it up. I need novelty, right? Our bodies need novelty. That's why if you eat the same foods forever, it's maybe you're like, like I go crazy when I go out to eat on Fridays, but maybe it's because really you're eating the same thing during the week and that's novelty, right? Or the weekends or on vacation. And knowing myself, I like to be challenged, okay? And so I was like, I need a new challenge. And this is when I started to question if what I was told to do, right? Lifting heavy, like I needed to trade that for what felt good. And this is how you bridge the knowing but not doing gap. You have to double down on satisfaction, not discipline. Or another way of saying is you have to stop trying to do what looks good to others and rather feels good in your body and life. right? And this is after clients have worked with me for a while, they're like, oof, I get it now. Like, this is actually really challenging to trust in satisfaction. Like, I can actually trust that where my body's leading me is safe and going to get me the results I want. Yes. So in this case, I knew I needed to mix up my workouts. The old workouts weren't meeting my needs anymore for the current season of my life. I was bored, right? After 4.5 years of lifting. All right. So this is now what we know the knowing but not doing gap is your needs are not being met. Okay. You're feeling emotionally unsafe some way. I was bored. I needed novelty. And it was showing up in how I felt in my body, not about my body, but in my body, lethargic, uninspired. And yes, I was gaining some weight. It motivated me a little bit, but it was really the like apathy that scares me. Apathy of certain things that should bring me joy. So the second step here is, okay, what are my needs? Okay. So for me, as I stopped wanting to lift at the gym, I found myself when I would go there, I'd be like, oh, I feel like doing some HIIT workouts again. So HIIT is high interval intensity training, where you basically go really high in your heart rate zone, like 80 to 90%, and then you recover. Okay. And I was starting to do that a few times a week. And I was really loving it, which is, I'm not always loving running, right? But I was really loving it. I loved the endorphin high, and it gave me a real charge in my system. Okay. It really kind of snapped me out of that inertia. And that was trickling into feeling really energized and having more agency in my life. Okay. And I also realized I really missed working out in community. I had done that for 3 years. And that was, I know, part of why I continued to show up. I'm very social. I mean, I have a podcast, but I work by myself, right? So, I love the gym because it was social. Carlos would be like, oh, I don't like the gym. It's so social. So this is again, self-awareness, but I needed that. And as it so happens, when you're rooted into your body's wisdom, when you actually understand what you're falling off track with food, with exercise actually means, and you know what those needs are, right? What those triggers are and what your needs are, I find the universe or God or the life force, whatever you want to call it, it starts to bring you things that are aligned. So for me, this was my awesome neighbor, Charlay. She had been doing Orange Theory for a while and had suggested it to me like about a year ago. And I was like, too much cardio, right? I had dismissed it. I was like, it's not enough heavy lifting. I mean, I was drinking the Menopause 101 Kool-Aid, right? But she was like, I was telling her about how I was like, I just don't feel like working out and it's affecting my mood. And she was like, try Orange Theory. They have lifting. And I was like, they do? And she was like, yeah. So I researched it, right? So I was like, all right, let me go research this. I'll get back to you. She's my neighbor, so I see her like every day. So I researched it. And when I went on the website, the messaging had shifted to include strength training. It was like, build muscle, strength train. Now, me being me, who is a healthy skeptic, I was like, oh, are they really adapting and evolving? Or is this just a marketing message they slapped on because of the menopause gold rush happening, right? Is this the health and wellness space in general is just so much more rooted in capitalism than any sense of sanity anymore? So anyhow, I was like, all right, I'm just going to first see if I like it, right? And to my surprise, I loved it, right? The community, the intensity, the music, going with Charlay, they had 6:15 in the morning classes so I could be over and back. Not a lot of traffic during the day at that time. You don't have to pay for parking, right? And I could be over and back before Essa and Carlos even got up. So it met all of these needs, right? I was like, yes, this is my new workout. So I was like, okay, this meets all my needs. Yay. But as I do in my work with clients, I had to understand the protective resistance to change or trusting in what feels good. Okay. So for me, I was accommodating the Menopause 101 info. And it's like, you need to do strength training or you'll fall and live a frail life messaging, right? That was so loud as my clients and I talk about, like all that noise. And when we feel overwhelmed or in the dark, like I did 4.5 years ago, it's really natural to turn to experts. And again, they can be a very stabilizing force. They can get you kind of where in the right direction you want to go. But at some point, and I know how to do this, you need to learn how to discern what will work for you in the current season of your life. You need more flexibility. You need a flexible structure to replace perfectionism. You need a flexible structure that's going to feel good rather than trying to be good. So I could see this pattern of mine and I knew I wanted to challenge it. Okay, so how did I kind of bust these myths around Orange Theory and menopause, right? How did I trust that I could trust in what's feeling good? So now that I knew what I really liked, I Googled it. I Googled Orange Theory and menopause, and I got wildly conflicting messages on Reddit, right? So I'm not a regular user of Reddit, but most people know Reddit can be really great or really terrible and awful. And I saw that even Dr. Stacy Sims was being misrepresented in clickbait articles, right? Not just in Reddit, but everywhere. And I was like, ugh. So I was like, I have to call someone who can like be a Sherpa, right? Not tell me what to do, but really explain to me what I need at this stage or how to think about this. So I called Juliet, who was my former co-host here on Insatiable. We're still really close. And I just wanted to get clarity. And she helped me reframe everything. And she was my Sherpa on this one because she won't tell me what to do, right? She'll teach me how to think so I can figure out what works best for my needs. I got to learn how to learn about what I need. So I want to share what Juliet shared here so that if you are in the same situation I am, or even if you want to start really focusing on needs versus habits and behavior change, which doesn't allow a lot of flexibility, this can help you. So here is Julie's muscle and cardio wisdom. And she said that I could share all of this. So the first thing I said to her is like, okay, I'm supposed to lift heavy, but what does that really mean? Like, okay, like when I was doing like the CrossFit style workouts, I was confident I was lifting heavy, but what does that really mean? Because when you can get to the essential nature of what you need to do, you will see there's a lot of flexibility. So what she was saying is that basically you can do lifting heavy anywhere, right? This is what I'm talking about, the needs. What you need to do to lift heavy is lift heavy enough that you only have 1 to 2 reps left in the tank at the end of the set. Okay. So you can do that with barbells. You can do that with dumbbells. Or you can even do that at Orange Theory if you adjust your reps and weights accordingly. Okay. So sometimes at Orange Theory, they might have higher reps. So if they're going to have higher reps, right, I will do a little bit of a lighter weight, but I should still only have 1 to 2 reps left in the tank, whether it's 6, 10, 12, right? Or if they offer that, sometimes I just do heavier weights because I'm like, I know what weight I can do if it's 6 to 8 reps. I'm doing that one. So I am there with the community, challenging myself with everyone else, but I know how to make it my own, right? I don't have to be good with what Orange Theory tells me is the workout, right? And then if it's heavy, if they're going heavier, I will make sure that I'm lifting heavy enough that after 1 to 2 reps, it's like, okay, that's it. And this takes some time to figure out. And I am now almost 2 months into Orange Theory and I'm still figuring this out. But this again is the glory of working through my own perfectionism. I can feel safe not having a plan, but trusting I can live into it, that I can figure it out as I go and experiment rather than thinking there's some perfect way to do each class. I'm also fully aware that Orange Theory is not going to give me the strength gains, or as Juliet calls it, muscle hypertrophy. I think I'm selling that right. The trainers are probably like cringing, like, oh, but basically you're stimulating the muscle enough that you're going to get gains, right? And so what I'm really focused on, my goals are shifting to muscle preservation. Now, I have been lifting for 4 years, okay? So I can do that, right? And Juliet said that Orange Theory can help with muscle preservation if you're lifting heavy, like I just talked about it, with the caveat that you can't exclude nutrition from the conversation. Any resistance training needs you to eat enough calories and protein, okay? So that's what she relayed. And she also emphasized that muscle gains take time. So to give you perspective, sometimes in our culture, the idea is more and more and more and more, unlimited growth. It's never enough. It's like always 5 more pounds to lose. It's never, you have to optimize your health now. You have to work at aging. You can't just, right? It's never freaking enough in our cultural conditioning. And so sometimes you might think like, I can build unlimited muscle, so I'm losing out if I don't lift all the time. But actually, muscle is really slow and takes a lot of time. So the good news is if it's really slow and low, you're not going to lose it overnight, right? So Juliet told me she trains harder than 99% of the people, and I know that. And she said that she was intentionally putting on muscle and she didn't want to like gain fat in the process. So she could have gone a little bit faster if she was willing to gain some weight, but she didn't want to. But in 5 months of working out harder than 99% of people, she only gained 1.5 pounds of muscle. Okay. Juliet is also 10 years younger than me, right? And she is not in menopause. So bringing some context to that, I was like, I wonder how much muscle I actually gained when I was lifting really heavy at my old gym. And so I went in because I would do the in body like once every like 3, 4 months. And it showed after 3.5 years, I had only gained 1.5 pounds of muscle, okay? Even with regular lifting. Now, granted, I lost about 30 pounds in that time, and you're going to always lose some muscle with weight loss, right? But if you're lifting and eating well, obviously that muscle is going to be as minimal as possible. So I was like, oh my God, 1.5 pounds over 3.5 years. And again, that is within the context of weight loss, but it's like, okay, so this isn't an overnight process. So this is all working for me right now. And then I'm not stressed that I'm going to lose massive amounts of muscle in a few months. So I can really enjoy what my body's craving, what my mood is craving, which is the feeling I want to do more cardio right now. And I'm still doing the weight floor. I'm starting. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Orange Theory, essentially you start on the weight floor or the cardio, or you can start on the treadmill and the weight. And I always start with the weights first so I can really maximize that workout and then do the cardio. So I'm focusing on just muscle maintenance for a while. Okay. That's what I'm craving. But I bet in winter, I might want to do more strength, right? Once I've had some time away, I may get bored with the cardio. But the important thing is I'm not going to lose all my muscle just because I take a season or two and do other things. And I'll share in a second. I'm doing a lot of other things. So I'm still using my muscles. The other thing that Julie and I talked about, cardio isn't the enemy. We talked about how in our culture of extremes, right, we kind of went the other way and made women think like, oh my God, cardio is going to like spike your cortisol. And a lot of women are afraid of belly fat with cortisol or gaining weight. I was really afraid of sleep because when I was first working with my sleep coach, like emotional stress and just having so much going on without enough downtime was causing me to sleep overnight. And it's really hard if you've never struggled with insomnia over several years to understand the anxiety I get around sleep when I'm in a bad place with my sleep. So I was so worried that cardio was going to make me not sleep. And Juliet was like, look, it's fine. 2 to 3 times a week of HIIT isn't going to spike your cortisol in a harmful way, especially if your life stress is managed. Okay. So we have gone too far the other way, thinking we don't need to do any cardio at all. And I was doing cardio. I was walking and like biking once a week, but I wasn't doing the intense stuff that I'm really, really loving right now. The other thing Juliet was saying was that you can ignore the heart rate monitor at Orange Theory. And this is really important. Even the trainer came over to me when I was like first starting and she's like, look, I know it says that you're in the orange zone, which is what you want to aim for, but like, can you talk to me? Right. And that's what Julie said too, right? What you want and what Dr. Stacey Sims is saying is polarity. You want to go really hard and you want to go really easy. So you don't need a bunch of gadgets. You don't need to go to Orange Theory. You don't need to go to a specific workout. What you need to do this kind of HIIT and sit training that is really good in perimenopause and menopause. And if you're not familiar with what that is, I'll link to my episode with Dr. Stacey Sims, who I adore and I had on the podcast. But what Juliet was saying is it's not specific workouts. It's that your heart rate is in a high enough zone that you can't say more than 1 to 2 words. Okay. So that's really important. And so what that means is she said it's a talk test. True HIIT is when you basically do the talk test where if you can only spit out 1 to 2 words, you're in the zone. That's HIIT training. If you can do a full sentence, nope, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And I will say that even though Juliet said like those heart rate zone monitors are like all marketing, it does help me to know a heart rate range for my specific heart rate training. So often because I'm new to it and I am making important cardiac gains, which I'm thrilled about, it'll say I'm in the red zone, which I'm too high, but but that's actually like me doing 1 to 2 words. So I'm actually in the right zone, even though they may say like, oh, that's too high. And I've just figured it out using Juliet's guiding principle. And again, the trainer at Orange Theory was like, you don't want to be able to say 1 to 2 words. That's how you know you're pushing yourself enough. Okay. So it helps me know what my numerical range is right now for target heart zone training. And Juliet was saying, this is so important because if you're new to cardio, your heart rate may only be at 50% of your max, but you can only say 1 to 2 words. You're doing HIIT training then. And this is just the right amount of stress, no matter how in shape or out of shape you are. 1 to 2 words, right? And again, that's the need. The need is, it doesn't matter if you're walking up a hill, if you're biking, if you're at Orange Theory, the need is 1 to 2 words, and do that for as long as possible and then go easy. And I just love that because you can do that anywhere. That gives you the flexibility. And so we all need to start where we are because we're all getting the same workout, right? I used to say this about yoga. Like, even though some people's poses look beautiful, they're going just beyond their comfort zone, right? In yoga right now, if I don't stretch a lot, I can just touch my toes. We're both getting the same workout, okay? So it just makes this very simple. And Julia had said as a pro tip, most people go too hard when they're supposed to be training easy or go too easy when they're supposed to be training hard. So this polarity of HIIT, when you rest as much as you push, that's what you need to do, right? So Dr. Stacey Sims recommends, sometimes like go a minute and hit as fast as you can for a minute. But again, if you're just starting, maybe 15 seconds and then recover for up to, 2-3 minutes, right? And so for me, I know how to do that for myself. And it may be different than what the Orange Theory workout is for the day, but I'm not trying to be perfect with what they're telling me to do, and the workout doesn't count. I know how to push myself and challenge myself and then make sure I'm going really slow to recover. Okay. Because I'm there for the community, the time. My neighbor, Charlotte, who I love, she's like such a great coach. She works for Nike. She's like super sporty and is like, I just love having her. I'm so grateful to go with her when we can go together. And I'm there to like push myself, right? And at that time. So that's what I've been doing. Many times I do the same workout as what Orange Theory is recommending, but I know how to adapt for my needs. And I know that I'm not comparing myself to the 25-year-old or the college kid next to me, right? They need something different. So again, Orange Theory is working because it's meeting the underlying emotional and physical needs that I have right now. So if your body is under a ton of stress, right, these 2 to 3 days a week of high intensity training might be too much. I think this would have been too much for me December through February when I was super stressed. Okay. But now it's working for me. And I'll share what I mean by working for me and the results. So what we talked about, the knowing versus doing gap is needs not being met, actually. Okay. And you having to find what works for you in this season of your life. Point two is what are the triggers that are making you fall off track, whether that's with eating or food. And then three is what are the needs that are going to satisfy those triggers, right? So I'm finding all of this very energizing, very fun, right? So that's meeting my tired trigger. And we'll get into how the tired trigger, a little bit misconceptions around that in a second. So what's working now for me? So I do Orange Theory twice a week. Love it. Don't feel like I need to do 3. I can see myself maybe wanting to do 3 once I get more into it. I bike twice a week. And actually last week I biked 3 times a week. I freaking love biking. I'm obsessed with it. I do trail and mountain biking. And now I'm still walking twice a week. Then usually I take like one day off, but I still try to be a little bit active because if I don't do anything, I'm more tired. And my main focus is energy, energy, energy. So what are my results so far? So sleep overall has been the best since pregnancy and my insomnia. And an interesting discovery for me as I focused on what my needs were is that this shift has helped me get to the root of my sleep issues in this phase of my life. So 4 years ago, it was cortisol from just too much emotionally and physically going on. It's so physically demanding to be postpartum and to be menopausal and then to do it at the same time. And then anyone who's had their first child knows it completely blows up your life. At least it did for me. It rearranges your relationship. We were in a pandemic, right? So, but now it helped me realize I wasn't getting enough calories. And that's what was waking me up. So, like I said, I don't like to track my food, but I found if I don't track, often I wouldn't eat enough and I would wake up. And so it helped me realize like, oh, I don't have to worry about cortisol from exercise. I just need to make sure I'm getting enough calories. And it's also helped a lot because I do want to lose weight, but I can only cut a certain amount without sleeping because I won't sacrifice my sleep. So being more active, I can get the base minimum of like 1,900 to 2,000 calories I need. And then I'm just more active so I can still lose some weight. So mental health, I have much more resilience and joy. And I also need to note, I did start testosterone. So I was doing estrogen and progesterone HRT. But when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with my sleep issues, I did some blood work with a functional nutritionist. And she said, your testosterone is like so low. And that can affect blood sugar metabolization, which might be why you're waking up overnight. But anyways, the testosterone is really helping me with energy, sleep, and just my overall drive in life. So it's not only exercise, but of course, nothing is one thing. And if you are doing all the things, HRT is like a supplement, not a magic bullet. So that is also helping. My energy is back. And most importantly, I feel really motivated, not just, hey, going through the motions, right? And then again, some of that is a little of the testosterone too, probably. And then joy, right? And I don't want to dismiss how hard the world is right now. That's a whole other podcast because it is really hard and I can get in funks because I did not vote for what is happening right now in our country. And I have found though that in order for me to show up with my community and my people in the way that I want to do, I really have to fuel myself with joy and remember what's worth fighting for, right? And what's worth showing up for. And we need to stay resourced, right? To help those who aren't as resourced as us, right? And so Juliet reminded me, she's like, movement is medicine and life is too short to be perfectionist around movement, right? And that was a great reminder for me of like, oh yeah, I've been so stressed about my sleep and losing muscle that I forgot the point of all of this is to enjoy your life fully. So this has all been helping me just show up for the people in my life, do more things for my community, call my representatives, of course, donate, been doing some mutual aid donation, just feel like I can stay in the intensity of what's happening, right? Because if we don't have that joy, it's so easy to withdraw and just kind of spiral. And when you participate in all the ways, you start to realize there's so many wonderful people out here doing really great things that are going to be more sustainable than the chaos that's happening now. I'm biking more and the hills feel easier and I'm faster. And my heart rate used to spike really high on certain hills. And now when I look at my Fitbit, it's like, oh my God, I'm still getting a good biking workout, but my cardiac health is getting so much stronger just in like a couple months. And that is so important. Women, again, heart disease is the biggest killer of women. It doesn't get quite as much press as other things, but those are the evidence-based reality. And as someone who had chemotherapy and radiation in my chest, I just don't know how that's going to affect my heart. So I love the peace of mind that I'm really training my heart with this cardio stuff. And then my weight, it is down. My weight is down about 4 pounds in about 6 weeks, I think, which that is actually fast for me because of my sleep issues. I was previously only able to really do 1 to 2 pounds a month. And that's if my sleep was on point. But I'm losing a little bit faster now because again, I'm more active and I'm able to just eat more so then my sleep stays. So really reconcile the tensioning of wanting to sleep and lose weight. The cardio has really helped with that. And again, it's also easier to be active here in the summer, even though it's been so freaking hot and sweaty here. So Orange Theory is helping me burn more baseline calories so that I can, again, still create a deficit and lose weight. So those are the results. I'm thrilled. This is what's working for me now. It may be different in 6 months, but the important thing is I know what my needs are and how to meet those needs so I can bridge that knowing but not doing gap. And for me, that was with exercise. So some final takeaways. You do not have to do workouts you hate that are boring to you, or if like me, you get bored of what you're doing. That means your needs are changing, not that you should feel guilty over imperfection or not listening to all the things the experts tell you or have to torture yourself. If you have a knowing but not doing gap around exercise or food, it just means that there are needs that aren't being met, okay? And what you need is more satisfaction, not more discipline, right? You don't have to stick to rigid plans to be healthy. In fact, I would say those rigid plans aren't sustainable and don't work in the long run. Start with what feels good now. Meet yourself where you are now, okay? Because you're going to feel differently if you do that in 3 months. You don't know what will, that's why I say this is working for me now. Who knows in 3 months? Maybe I'll be going 3 times. Maybe I'll start lifting here at home again a little bit. I don't know, right? But I'm in tune with my needs because of that self-awareness. And needs-based approaches meet you where you are. They're flexible, you can't fail at them, and they're sustainable. And they are the key to bridging that knowing but not doing gap, okay? And that gap is really pointing towards the second half of the mountain, where you don't need another perfect plan. You need a Sherpa or a mountaineering guide to show you how to find your own way, okay? And one thing I want to say about this, most women, hands down, just aren't even walking enough. So don't let this perfect, okay, I got to do HIIT training, I got to do strength training. Don't let that be the enemy of getting started. This is why I also wanted to do this episode. Again, most women aren't just walking enough. So start walking 3 days a week, right? It's You don't have to change into workout clothes. You don't need special shoes. You just need a safe neighborhood and some time. Okay. If you're struggling, just really start where you are and reignite joy and movement. And if you've never had that, that's part of what I can help teach you with actually in Why Am I Eating This Now? Even though it's called Why Am I Eating This Now, it could be Why Am I Not Exercising Now? Okay, so if you want to meet your emotional needs through food and movement, so you have a no-fail flexible structure to get to your goals, I really want you to consider this program, which is starting in the fall. Okay, we start September 17th. Early bird registration is open right now. And with early bird registration, not only will you save $100, but you will also get the Your Emotional Eating Blueprint course that I ran in May, complimentary, so you can get started right away. And that course helps you start to connect how food is about safety and belonging. Falling off track makes sense, and you're going to identify your main trigger. And in that course, I give you all the needs, that what the triggers are and the needs, that how you satisfy those, okay? So I'll give you a link in the show notes for a free sneak preview of Why Am I Eating This Now? And then how to get that savings once you watch that masterclass, which is the free sneak preview. You'll get all the details on how to join now so you can get started. There's also some live calls with me in July and August so that you can build momentum and get support for when we officially begin in September. And again, that course will teach you what needs you need to have satisfied to bridge that gap between knowing and doing. And if this approach makes so much sense to you and you are a health coach or a therapist or a nutritionist or a healing professional, my Truce Coaching certification, which teaches you how to facilitate this needs-based approach for your clients, begins in October if you're interested, okay? A lot of people who are professionals, a lot of nutritionist coaches who are just kind of tired of feeling like they can't help their clients sustain their results. That's when people tend to come to the coaching certification, the Truce Coaching certification, or they want to help their clients really up level and get sustainable, like transformational change. This is for you. There's also a link in the show notes for a free sneak preview of that and about why SMART goals are sabotaging most clients, because hint, they're not needs-based. They're actually expecting clients to dig into their perfectionism, which is the problem. You can also email me at Allie@AllieShapiro.com to just chat if that's the right certification for you. And one last thing I wanted to say, I forgot. I said I was going to talk a little bit more about the tired trigger. But again, for me, the trigger was tired. That's why I was not looking forward to working out. And one of the big things that was surprising to people that they learned in the Your Emotional Eating Blueprint, because tired is one of the main triggers for emotional eating, but also falling off track with any type of food or exercise, is that tired is not from just not sleeping and needing a nap. Tired is not just from doing so much. Tired is from not having agency or choice in your life, not enough of what you want on your plate. Think about like a buffet where you're like, oh, none of this is really satisfying versus like a beautiful, like curated, gorgeous plate of food that has just everything right. Okay. So I call it in my work being in choice. When you don't have enough of things to look forward to in your life, that causes exhaustion as well. When there's not enough stuff in your day. Okay. So think about that. Movement is a way that we can have agency, can have choice. Okay. And I understand we all have constraints with time and budgets and all that stuff. But there is something that you can find, especially with YouTube, with the great outdoors. I know those of you listening in the Southern Hemisphere, you're in winter, starting to come out of that. But there is a way that you can move your body that feels good and is accessible, okay? And that can be one way that you can start to feel a little bit more energized. All right. Thanks for listening. This was supposed to be a mini-so, but it turned into 45 minutes. But remember, feeling good helps you do good, both for your own personal goals and to be able to show up for the people in your life. And we need all of us being willing to show up for ourselves and each other right now, okay? Like really in it. Prioritize joy where you can find it. Tune into your needs. Yes, you have them, even if you don't know what they are. And trust that your body and heart know the way forward. Okay, that's really the work. Including that knowing but not doing gap might just be an invitation into discovering more about yourself and what works for you now. I'll see you back here for our next Insatiable episode.